Marine Industry Association says the America's Cup could be worth almost $500 million to the local economy just from super yacht visits alone. The association's executive director is Peter Busfield, and he's with me now in the Auckland studio. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. Hi.
Let's talk about what they're spending their money on. It was interesting to talk to you off air about the super yachts and when they come in. They have to clear out their fridges and everything for MAF, I guess, and then they start buying again, and that's all money that's being spent in the economy, right?
Yeah, it's great for the New Zealand food producer and the retailer because they'll spend $30,000 or $40,000 on replenishing their fridges and freezers as soon as they arrive in New Zealand.
$30,000 or $40,000 each one of these yachts?
Correct. These
super yachts. And how many are you expecting in?
We're expecting at least an additional 100 to the 50 or so that we get on an annual basis at the moment. It could be more. There were nearly 100 in Bermuda in 2000 and 2003 in New Zealand. We had 94 for 2000, 116 for 2003. And since then, the number of super yachts in the world has doubled. But just keeping our feet on the floor, we'll be struggling to actually accommodate an additional 100 super yachts in New Zealand. From an infrastructure point of view, it's very clear that the market's there. These boats do want to come. I personally spoke to about 20 super yachts in Bermuda, and they all said they're coming to New Zealand.
All right, we'll talk about some of the constraints and some of the logistical problems that you see in just a second, but I'm just interested in exactly what they're spending their money on. So 160 yachts, you're saying, could be coming in. And that $500 million that we're talking about, that's from their spend alone. You've done some quite detailed work on what the money is spent on. I'm interested in some of these categories. Tenders and toys. What's a toy in this context?
Well, a toy could be a mini submarine that's worth a couple of $1 million. It could be a helicopter, certainly jet skis. Some of them will have a 10-metre yacht or powerboat on their deck or stored below decks. And New Zealand will understand what a dinghy is. We call it a tender to get to a little keel boat. Well, a tender for these super yachts will go at about $2 million each, and there'll be a 12-metre tender. We build a lot of them in New Zealand.
A $2 million dinghy?
Yes.
And is that something we're producing in New Zealand?
We are, and when these boats come here and they see what New Zealand can produce, there'll be a lot more orders from New Zealand boat builders.
And I guess spending a lot of money on eating out, drinking, shopping, that sort of thing as well. You've done quite detailed costings on all that, and it adds up, doesn't it?
It does. This is the wealthiest set in the world. It's foreign exchange earnings that literally float to our shores, and it's business not only for the marine industry, but for the horticultural industry, the florists, supplies of rental cars, corporate aeroplanes, travel to Queenstown, to the far north. It's a benefit to the whole country, actually. You
had a story about one super yacht's obsession with flowers.
Yes, in Bermuda, just for example, one super yacht spent $200,000 US, that's 300,000 nearly New Zealand dollars, on flowers over a couple of months. Every day they had flowers replenished and they were flown in from Europe. Well, there's an opportunity for New Zealand for the locals to say we can grow flowers that are pretty and supply them on a daily basis for tens of thousands of dollars.
All right, so lots of potential opportunity. Let's talk about some of the constraints. What do you make of where Auckland Council is at in terms of its preferred venue?
Well, obviously it's related to the syndicate basis because Auckland has to provide the infrastructure so we can actually accommodate up to at least 10 syndicates. But the majority of financial gain to the country is actually from the super yachts that visit. So it's most necessary to make provision for berthage of these expected super yachts coming to New Zealand, particularly Auckland. If we don't, then we'll lose that opportunity. Australia is already ramping up their infrastructure for super yachts off the back of the America's Cup being held in New Zealand. They see the opportunity. Tahiti, I was speaking to the CEO of Tourism Tahiti, they're expecting to double the number of super yachts going through Tahiti because New Zealand's won the America's Cup. So it's big business actually for the whole of the South Pacific, and it'll be actually devastating if New Zealand doesn't take the opportunity of reaping the financial gain and leaving it to Tahiti, Fiji and Australia.
So what's your message to Auckland Council then in terms of venue for hosting this?
It's equally important to accommodate the super yachts as it is for the syndicate basis, because that's where the money comes for every Kiwi from Gaitai through to Southland, is the visitation of the super yachts. So we have to be hospitable, have the right infrastructure for those vessels to come here, and keeping our feet on the ground. Obviously, we want a legacy situation that if we lose the America's Cup at any stage, that we can rely on that infrastructure to continue to provide economic gain for New Zealand. And I'm confident that if we build up our infrastructure to house super yachts, not only in the water, but haul out for refit and maintenance, then that's ongoing business legacy that we'll enjoy for decades in the future.
And in terms of central government, what are you expecting or hoping for from them?
Well, I'm hoping for quite a lot, really, rather than just be all left to Auckland Council and Auckland Council ratepayers, because every New Zealander gains. The school teacher in Timaru, if we get the extra funding, the foreign exchange earnings, the hundreds of millions of dollars that comes into the country through the super yacht visitation, well, they all pay taxes, they all travel throughout the country, and they provide the government with additional funding so they can provide more money for social services, school teacher salaries. I think everyone thinks that they should be paid more. Well, let the super yachts come in, and this is really an added funding for the New Zealand government nationwide.
And so in terms of next steps, I mean, we're expecting a council decision this week. Things are moving ahead pretty fast.
They are, and I think Auckland Council's got to look at their overall strategy. And in their 20, 30, 40 plan, they've identified two manufacturing sectors that they really want to keep the momentum going for employment and training in Auckland, and that is marine industry and food. Now, what a better platform to support the strategy of Auckland Council in regards to the America's Cup, because this will provide huge impetus for the technology gains, the employment gains, apprenticeships in the marine sector, plus on the food sector, as we've described, how that'll gain from all these international visitors.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning and for coming into the studio, Peter. Peter Busfield there from the Marine Industry Association. It's 26 minutes past 8.
The National Party says if the Auckland Council could get its costs under control, it wouldn't need to charge a regional fuel tax. Aucklanders will be paying an extra 10 cents a litre when they fill up the tank with a regional fuel tax to come into force in July next year. The government yesterday confirmed legislation putting the tax in place is a priority.